T-minus 1 minute. T-minus 30 seconds. We are go for launch. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Next up, we're taking you behind the scenes to check out some of Kennedy Space Center's most historic locations.
And here we are once again for the NASA Social, the first virtual and international social for the Demo 2 mission with the Commercial Crew program. I'm Joshua Santora with NASA Communication, welcoming you. Obviously, this beauty behind me is Space Shuttle Atlantis, the last one to take humans into space from American soil. And joining me for our show today, Steph Plasinski. Steph, how excited are you for launch on Wednesday?
I'm pumped, and I'm so happy that you guys can join us for the first ever virtual global NASA Social. I'm Stephanie Plasinski with NASA Communications, and next up, we're taking you behind the scenes of Kennedy Space Center's Spaceport to view some of the most iconic locations. If you have a question, feel free to leave it in the comments section, and we may be able to answer it live.
So, like you mentioned, ask questions. We're talking about icons today. This is certainly one of the most important icons we've got here, thinking about the past 9 years without human spaceflight capability from America that ends on Wednesday. So super excited. We're going to show you some of the physical spots around center that are so impressive, in particular the crew walkout area, which will be used once again on Wednesday. Take a look.
Hey everyone, welcome to Kennedy Space Center. We're going to take you behind the scenes to see some of the icons of this historic place. Right behind me, you'll see pad 39A, and over on the other side, you'll see pad 39B. You can actually get to this stop by going on the Kennedy Space Center Visitor Complex bus tour and get some photos of these iconic launch pads. When you're at Kennedy Space Center, you have the opportunity to see so many different things, including the Vehicle Assembly Building, multiple launch pads, Astronaut Beach House, which is where the Apollo and shuttle astronauts used to hang out prior to their launches. Did you know that Kennedy Space Center is also on a wildlife refuge? You'll get the chance to see some awesome animals, and you may even get the chance to see our beachside restoration, where we're working on protecting our beaches. Right behind me is Kennedy Space Center's countdown clock. Guests and media gather here to watch progress of the launch while looking out to the launch pad, waiting for liftoff. The former countdown clock earned its place in the space community as an icon familiar to everyone who watched an Apollo or shuttle launch on TV. You can now find it at its new location at Kennedy Space Center Visitor Complex. The new countdown clock, installed in 2014, showcases NASA's whole pre-launch program, and if the numbers stop counting down, those following along won't have to wonder whether it's a built-in hold or a technical glitch with the rocket. They'll know quickly from the screen. The clock is controlled from the Launch Control Center by the Timing and Imaging Technical Support Group, also known as the Timing Crew. From their consoles, technicians monitor and distribute the official time to NASA facilities, including the firing rooms. Before a launch, the launch director performs the traditional call to stations and the countdown clock is activated and begins to count down eventually to T0 in hours, minutes, and seconds. After launch, the clock runs forward, recording mission elapsed time. Hey everyone, welcome to the Operations and Checkout building here at Kennedy Space Center. Did you know just a few floors above us is crew quarters? That's where the DM2 astronauts have been in quarantine for the past few days. Unfortunately, access is restricted, but I want to tell you a little bit more about it. Follow me. Do these doors look familiar? That's because this is the iconic crew quarters walkout.
Astronauts Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and then finally Mike Collins, now boarding the transfer van for the trip to the launch pad.
Flashing their cameras as the crew comes out.
This is a very historical walkway. It's the same path that the Apollo astronauts took to go to the moon.
The flying crew now departing from their crew quarters here at the Kennedy Space Center.
Here, Apollo and shuttle astronauts walk through these very doors to get into their vehicles and head to the launch pad. Welcome to the astronauts' home away from home. Occupying about 26,000 square feet of the Neil Armstrong Operations and Checkout building, the Demo 2 astronauts will spend 7 days quarantined in the astronaut crew quarters. It features 23 bedrooms, each with a bathroom, and the iconic suit room, where astronauts are helped into their pressure suits moments before boarding a vehicle to take them to the launch pad. Recently, it completed an upgrade for astronauts, including new carpets, ceiling tiles, and fresh paint on the walls. All appliances have been replaced, as has the audio-visual teleconference system in both conference rooms. The suit room, last used in official capacity in July 2011 for the STS-135 launch, the final mission of the Space Shuttle program, has been reactivated and remodeled. And there are now 3 suit containment rooms, one each for Orion, Boeing, and SpaceX.
We're really glad to share these opportunities and experiences with you because a lot of times they can start to feel a little bit normal for us. But as I watch that video, I'm reminded that there's nothing normal about crews walking out to ride to a launch pad to fly into space. So again, some amazing icons there. We want to emphasize that what makes this place so great, what makes this a spaceport that truly shines, is the people. And so join now is one of those people. Kristen Leyva, thanks for joining us this afternoon.
No, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, so Kristen is a newer employee here at the Space Center, but we wanted to bring some of that experience to our NASA social because we love for people to be able to connect with those that are younger and newer to this world and closer to school because we think that it's a great perspective to remind us again about how amazing these moments are. So tell us where you work here and what you're doing for KSC.
Yeah, so I actually came on board about 8 months ago. I'm working for the Amazing Launch Services program, which for those of you who don't know, Launch Services is responsible for launching NASA science and robotic missions. So I'm personally am working at Hangar 8E as a mission comm engineer, or at least I'm learning the role of a mission comm engineer. So what my job will be is to interface with the spacecraft customer, understand all of their comm and telemetry requirements, and make sure that all of those requirements are ready and good to go for launch operations.
And you mentioned communication and want to kind of be specific a little bit. Does that, I think a lot of us think about communications as our internet services, it's our cell phones. Is it those kinds of communication or is it more than that?
So it's a little bit more than that from what I've learned so far, but that is part of it. Communications as in networking, as in getting them the voice, the video, the data that they need, so that way the engineers can validate and check all the telemetry. And there's a lot that actually goes into it, so I think communications is really just a big umbrella for what it all entails, but it's really exciting to be able to learn it.
So you're saying that rockets are not simple things? They're complicated?
No, I don't think so. Yeah, they're definitely not simple.
Good. Well, and I know that, again, something that we pride ourselves on here is the uniqueness of the experiences and backgrounds of the people who work for us. So Kristen, like most of us, you have a really unique, special background. So tell us a little bit about your path to get to the Kennedy Space Center.
Yeah, so I would say my path to getting to NASA and Kennedy Space Center in general is really one which is interesting how it all came full circle. But basically, growing up, my mom was actually an engineer at White Sands Test Facility, which is another NASA site in New Mexico. And she was an engineer who worked on the thrusters for the space shuttle. So I don't know how she managed to do that, but somehow she was able to bring along me and my sister for some of her test firings. And I think really being able to see her in action and see her in that role was so inspiring as a young girl. You know, you kind of look up to your parents anyway, but for me and seeing her that day, she looked like a complete rock star to me. And so, you know, just being able to see myself in her shoes one day really propelled me into becoming the engineer that I am today. So fast forward years later, I ended up going to school for mechanical engineering and got my master's degree in industrial engineering. Along the way, I found myself doing pageants, and I actually ended up winning Miss New Mexico USA. And I really dedicated my entire year as Miss New Mexico to trying to be the kind of role model that my mom was for me, for a multitude of kids all over my state. Sally Ride has this really awesome quote, and while I can't repeat it verbatim, I'm going to try to paraphrase, but essentially she says that, you know, we have to give our young girls these role models to look up to so that way they can see themselves doing these jobs one day. So basically what she says is you can't be what you cannot see. So that was my purpose as Miss New Mexico.
Yeah, super, super true. And Steph, I want to make sure that as we get social questions, please make sure you're asking questions as we go through the show. Feel free to send those along, and Steph, jump in here.
Yes, we have a question from our Facebook community, and they want to know, how did you feel when you first got your job at NASA? And can you share your experience with us?
Yeah, so when I first got my job at NASA, I think I was in a hotel room and I was on training somewhere for a previous job, and I just remember sitting there, and at the time I hadn't even processed moving to Florida. So for me, I think that was the moment where, you know, sometimes life is funny in the sense that things come full circle, and that was definitely a moment for me when I was like, wow, this is really happening. This is really an opportunity. So I didn't even hesitate whenever I got the job offer. I just decided, you know, this is right, and I'm going to go for it.
So was it a move to Florida and look for a job, or was it a look for a job and it happened to be in Florida?
It was more probably of a look for a job and end up in Florida. So at the time, I had really just given up my title as Miss New Mexico. So my commitment to the state was over in a sense. So at that point, I was really looking, okay, like what's the next chapter? What do I want to do next? And thankfully, I ended up here, which I'm so grateful and excited to be a part of.
That's incredible. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. We have another question from our audience. They want to know, what advice do you have for someone who wants to work at NASA in the future? I
love that question. I think my advice would be to never give up on it, because, you know, obviously NASA is really the pinnacle of every engineer's dream to end up at. So I would just really advise them to never give up on it. I personally didn't go through the Pathways program, but I know that that's a great way to go about it. So I think, you know, obviously NASA recommends going that route. But for me personally, it was just about constantly looking at USA jobs and seeing something that I really connected with. And when I did, going for it.
Is that an intimidating thing? Because obviously you kind of mentioned it feels like the pinnacle of the engineering jobs in the world. Is that something where you apply and you're like, this will never happen? Or are you like, no, I'm going to go get this job, like I got this?
I think for me, I guess for me, you know, seeing my mom at a younger age and being able to see her, she was already working at NASA. So for me, it never seemed like something that was unattainable. And that's an advice I would give to someone whoever, you know, wants to pursue working at NASA, is to never limit themselves or think that something is unattainable. You know, always go after your dreams. And I think persistency is key to achieving whatever it is that you want to go for.
That's awesome. You mentioned to me before we started today that part of getting into pageantry, I think I got this right, part of getting into pageantry was about working on some things you wanted to get stronger with, some things that you identified as like, hey, these are not my strengths, I'd like to work on them. Can you talk a little bit about that and just that reality of walking into something knowing like, I'm not the best at this, I'm going to get better?
Yeah, so I decided to pursue pageantry because honestly, I was terrible at public speaking. I would choke up the second I would get in front of, even if it was 2 people. And secondly, it was at a point in college whenever my peers were getting internships and were actually starting to interview for those internships, and I realized I had never had a formal interview before. So my friend at the time was getting ready to compete for Miss New Mexico, and I decided to tag along because I knew, for one, it was going to force myself out of my comfort zone, and what better way to grow than to do that. And secondly, you know, I knew it was going to force me to attain these skills, and I'm so glad it did, because really the skills that you gain through pageantry are applicable not only within your personal life, but they're applicable, in the workplace as well. So very glad that I did it.
Sure. Can you give us any more on that? Because I think that's something else that people would probably be interested to know of. How do you make a move from pageantry to the world of NASA? Because most people see those as very much night and day.
Mm-hmm. I guess I personally never saw it that way. And even for young girls, I think a part of it is not really seeing what a society's typical convention of someone is, or a stereotype.
Sure.
So I've been blessed in the sense that I had a really amazing mother who kind of broke all stereotypes, and for that reason I didn't see them myself, and I never saw a reason why I couldn't do both.
That's awesome.
So Kristen, obviously Wednesday is a huge day. Do you have any plans on being out here or even working the launch?
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, Hangar AE is going to be supporting launch. So Hangar AE is LSP's premier communication center, so we provide voice, video, and data for our LSP customers, or even for our advisory customers. So Demo 2 is one of them, so we'll be providing them our facilities. We've hosted them for pre-launch simulations. We'll also host them for launch day, and we've been providing them our communication services as well. So I'll be there on launch day supporting CCP as with the Hangar AE team.
Cool. Had you seen a rocket launch before you came out to take this job?
No, not in person.
Okay.
So that was awesome.
Yeah. Do you remember your first one? You remember what it was?
I want to say it was GPS 3. It was pretty early on when I got here.
Is that Delta 4?
I'm trying to remember.
We'll have to check on that anyway. Yeah. But so what was that experience like? And obviously, I think in the past 8 months, we've probably had close to 10 launches, something like that. So how's that been?
That has been amazing. I had never experienced anything like that. So my first launch, like I said, was GPS 3. I think I had only been here about 2 weeks, but I was in the hangar and I was actually standing outside with my boss, and you could just hear the rocket shaking the roof of the hangar, and you could kind of feel it in your chest too. And it's an incredible experience. So honestly, I haven't gotten tired of getting to see them. So I'm so excited for Wednesday. I think it's going to be really awesome.
Good, yeah. So we were having fun earlier, so I'll answer this question, and I want to ask these two ladies too. The question is, where were you the last time we flew humans into space? So this is July of 2011, July 2011. So I was working at the time, so I was out at the press site. We were doing something very similar to this, but very much on an educational level, doing STEM engagement activities, doing a broadcast leading up to launch. And so I had a chance to get to see that in person. So 9 years ago, where were you, Stephanie?
I was actually a senior in high school. One of my biggest regrets is never asking my parents to drive me up to see a shuttle launch, because I feel like that would be incredible. My sister used to tell me that she would be surfing as she got to watch the shuttle launches, and I just can't even imagine what that would be like. So I'm so pumped for Wednesday.
And Kristen, where were you 9 years ago? What were you up to?
I think I was in high school, or maybe going into high school.
Okay.
I can't remember what I was doing at that exact day. I wish I had a better memory.
That's okay.
But honestly, getting to go to work with my mom, that was enough for me, and that was pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's super cool. So for you, thinking about you being very early in your career with us, do you have kind of a vision for the rest of your career? You've done a lot already. What's the future hold for you?
As of right now, I'm really focused on learning the job that I got hired for. And honestly, I already feel so fortunate to be a part of a program. You know, LSP has 20 years of excellence, and it's so incredible to be a part of a program that has that. So as of right now, I want to focus on doing the best job I possibly can for LSP and doing the job that I was hired for. But we'll see.
Good. Very good. All right, Kristen, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate you taking the time to sit with us and chat. Hopefully I'm sure the folks out there appreciate hearing again that we have a very diverse workforce here. Excuse me.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me. It's awesome to share the story. Hopefully it inspires someone out there to maybe pursue engineering or pageantry if they want.
Absolutely, or both.
Or both, yeah.
There you go, very good. All right, Steph, thanks for riding along with me as co-host.
Thank you.
All right, get ready. One more show for the day at 4 o'clock Eastern today. We have a really, really cool lineup. Astronaut and former NASA Administrator Charlie Bolden, astronaut Leland Melvin, and NFL quarterback for the Jacksonville Jaguars, Josh Dobbs. We will see you soon as we continue the NASA Social for Demo 2.